Hi, welcome to episode 31 of Cilium Weekly, where I go through some of the new and past Cilium features. And in this one, I'm going to be looking at a new feature that is going to come in Cilium 1.15, where you can use Cilium again as a ingress and slash gateway API to redirect traffic. So that's going to come in Cilium 1.15. You can already try it and test it with some of our kind of early releases. And I'll walk you through a demo, but we often talk about Cilium as a CNI, right? Just providing networking for Kubernetes pods. But actually, you will see many of my features and previous episodes of Cilium Weekly were about some of the service mesh and ingress features, whether it's mutual authentication, but I've done a lot around gateway API here and here, or which is really more towards layer 7 load balancing as traffic enters the cluster. So having said all this, now what we're going to explore is how Cilium can essentially act as a gateway to HTTP requests and tell a client where to go, send a client a redirect when the resources they're trying to access is no longer where they expect it to be. So, for example, what we're going to see is we support something called a path redirect. So if you have a client that is trying to access a cluster and it will make a request to the gateway API IP, and the gateway API will send a redirect back to the client with a 302 status code, which is a kind of 300 is redirects, and will change the prefix, and it will tell the client this is where you have to go, right, to access this resource. We are also going to look at something called the path and host redirect, where we not only change the path, but we also change the host, right? We'll tell exactly, we're directing to even a different host name. We can also change the status code, right? Because the default status code is 302, which is essentially a temporary relocation of a resource. You can change the status code to 301 and say, this has moved permanently. And if you try with, for example, to do a curl to api.twitter.com, you will get a 301, while the resource is no longer accessible. So here again, we can tell the client where to go and change, and also combine it with some of the other features and change the source prefix. And finally, you can also change a scheme. So what we mean by this is if you have a client that is trying to access something over HTTP, you can tell the client to use HTTPS instead, and again divert the client to a different hostname. So let's have a look at a demo here. I've already kind of built this environment. It's using Cilium 1.15.0 pre-0, which is a pre-release of Cilium 1.15, and you'll see more pre-releases being released on a regular basis on the run-up to Cilium 1.15, which is going to come out in a few months' time. What I've got already is I've got a gateway API, gateway deployed, and it's programmed, it's working, and I've also got a HTTP route, which is essentially how we route the traffic, and that HTTP route is attached to the gateway I've deployed. And let's get, actually you can see we got the IP address of the gateway, which is 172.18.255.200, and we're just going to save it as the gateway variable. Now, what we've done is we've deployed this redirect HTTP routes, and if we just go and have a look at it here using this manifest, so look at this and move me out of the way. So what we do is using the gateway API, we match based on the prefix, for example, and then we redirect the client to a different prefix, or again, like I said before, we could direct them to a different host or change the scheme or the status code. but what we do is we match based on this value, and then we redirect to this value. Let's have a quick look. So what we'll do, and again, let's move me back here. We're going to get that IP address from the gateway, which was the 200. So we'll try 4 different. One will be a curl to the gateway to the original prefix, and you can see when we do a curl command, we use curl-l, which essentially enables you to follow the redirects. By default, if you do a curl, you won't follow the redirect. So we need to use curl-l-v. -v is verbose, and we can see the response header. And in the response header, we can see that the traffic, the location that we tell the client to go to. Right? So we tell the client to go to, instead of going to the 172.18.255.200 original prefix, you should go to the replacement prefix. Right? And again, this was specified in the gateway specification here. So that's one example. Next, we can also change a host name. So this will be using telling the client to go to example.org. And again, we can also replace the prefix here. So if we do this time, here we go, curl-l-v to the path, gateway, path, and host. As you can see, we've been redirecting to example.org with the replacement prefix. Right? Again, that was based on the rules that we defined earlier. We can also change the status code, and as I mentioned before, you can see that by default we set a status code of 302, which is essentially to say that the resource has been moved temporarily. But we could say that the resource, we can send a reply and say the status code is 301, which means that the resource has moved permanently to a different location. So by using this command, we can see that the status code is now 301, and again we also change the prefix of the path. And finally, last one we can do in this very short demo is changing the scheme. So again, you can set off a user trying to access something over HTTP. We can tell, well, actually, we want you to access this resource over HTTPS and to the specific host or to the specific prefix, etc. So here we're going to redirect the client to example.org, and we're not going to change the prefix this time, but we are going to force the client to use HTTPS. Right? So you can see the redirection location that sent back by the gateway is to HTTPS, and the resource was originally, the request was originally sent with HTTP. So that's the end of this demo on doing HTTP redirect with Cilium, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.